All right, everybody. I've got two very special guests, two returning very special guests for y'all this week. Everybody, please welcome back the Hivemind, Jackson Lanzing and Collin Kelly. How's it going, boys?
We're great, man. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Glad to have you guys back. It's always a blast talking to you, and just grateful you took time to come chat with me today.
Absolutely. We love to chat comics.
Speaking of which, let's dive right into it. I mean, you guys got a bunch of stuff. Just came off of Guardians of the Galaxy, which was a really fun run, and then have all this other stuff coming out. Let's start actually where the least of my knowledge hits, which is Star Trek. Last time we talked, you guys I think you just started Star Trek or just kind of getting the groove of it. You still got it going on. How's that project going?
Star Trek's been a dream for us in a lot of ways. It was a project that we had been fighting to do for many years. We both grew up with Star Trek. We both love it a lot, but we also feel like it tends to get kind of like cornered off in its own little fan base, and like people don't think it's approachable. There tends to be less of an understanding that like you can get into Star Trek as much as you can get into Star Wars, or you can get into Marvel, or you can get into DC, or any of these things. Mm-hmm. And we really didn't think that was true. Maybe as storytellers who were grown up in it, we saw the connections between it and Marvel, and it and DC, and it and Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings, and all these other franchises that Star Trek echoes and answers in its own way, the same way that these other myths do. There's no reason why that one couldn't be as accessible and as exciting and as well put together and as prestige as any of those other projects. So when we came to Star Trek originally, it was to do something like this, some large-scale line that let us tell a big ongoing comics narrative story, the kind that's even hard to tell at Marvel and DC these days, given how hard it is just to keep an ongoing series on the shelf, right?
Yeah.
As you noted, right? Guardians of the Galaxy, book sold great, book got canceled at 11, right? Like we only planned for 11 because we don't plan beyond our initial order, but it's hard to keep these books on the shelves right now. Star Trek has been an aberration in that respect. We are coming up on our 19th issue. I think issue 19 released today. We are planned for at least another year on that thing. We have a sister series in Star Trek Defiant that Chris Cantwell is doing, and now a sibling series in Sons of Star Trek, which Mo Hampton is doing with Ana Hernandez. Had incredible artists come around and play with this story with us now, from Roman Rosanas, who started the series, through Marcus Toe, who just came on to us, and now Megan Levins, who's coming aboard the book. So we've really had a chance to express a lot of different corners and sides of the Star Trek universe and really engage with it in a more like sort of whole and exciting and very like comics-oriented way. We've come through our first event, Day of Blood, and come out the other side. We're heading towards, I think now it's public knowledge to say we're heading towards a second event that's going to be something else entirely. Like it's a really exciting frontier of comics, to use the Star Trek term.
Final frontier.
Yeah, in fact. And out of that, I think it's really just been like, it's been incredibly heartening to see fans show up, to see creators show up, to see Star Trek people show up and give us the support for the various shows to help us and make sure that our thing sits entirely within their canon. And not for nothing, but Colin and I have never been nominated for an Eisner before, and we were nominated for 2 last year for Star Trek, both for Best New Series and for Best One Shot. So it really was an incredible thing to see Star Trek break into the Eisners, a thing that it has never done in the history of the franchise, and really felt like a lovely validation of the work that Heather Antos and her entire team have been doing over there at IDW with us.
And for folks who might be Star Trek fans or who just are now intrigued, to give you a little taste of what this story actually is, to give you some proper nouns, as it were, this is the return of Benjamin Sisko coming out of the wormhole and assembling a all-star crew. As Jack mentioned, kind of treating this like Marvel or DC, we're looking at this as a Justice League or an Avengers, bringing together cast members from Voyager, Next Generation, having links back to even Enterprise and TOS in order to bring this crew together to solve a mystery that the Prophets have sent Benjamin Sisko on, effectively a detective story of who is killing the gods. We rolled into that question and answered it to a certain degree with, as Jack mentioned, our Day of Blood event. And now we're kind of hurtling through Act 2. The arc that we are just beginning now is going to be a very exciting return to form, to return to that question, where we start directly looking at some of the, what science might call Kardashev level 3 species and what most of us call gods. Looking at that directly, because while Star Trek is often considered the science version of space, if Star Wars is kind of your mythical magic side, Star Trek is kind of replete with gods, with these deity level omniscient beings who can shape reality itself. So we wanted to dive back into that, really look at these characters and look at how they're so powerful, but also so many of them are so human, so petty, so small-minded. And that's really what we are excited to dive into. So if you are a Star Trek fan, we have touch points everywhere. And if you have a favorite of these god-level species, most likely we are about to bring them to the forefront, and you can see what happens next.
That all sounds very interesting. But once again, I'm someone who's, funny enough, because my father's a big Trekkie, I've seen all of the movies. I still don't consider myself a Star Trek fan.
Right.
That's brutal, my guy. That's savage.
I don't know. I don't think the movies have ever been Star Trek's finest hour. I think if you want to get into Star Trek, TV's the way to go.
I have a goal to at least try out Next Generation because I've been told that I would really like it. But it sounds to me, are you playing with time travel here? Because you say kind of like the best of different shows.
No, in fact, that's the one thing we've really tried to avoid. And that's partially because Star Trek has had to do that a lot in the past. Star Trek has sort of seen time travel as its way to combine things and put people together. They just did this on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, where they did a crossover with Lower Decks, which takes place about 150 years later. And so they had to have them go through a time portal. That is not what we are doing. Instead, what we're trying to do is there was a period of Star Trek time where it was effectively the first of these shared cinematic universes. It doesn't get a lot of credit for this, but it had several different television shows all going on at the same time. Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, all of which took place in the same 10-year span. They crossed over, they had events, they had characters that crossed over, they had, a supporting character on Next Gen might become a regular character on Deep Space Nine, who then shows up to help the Voyager characters kick off in their pilot. They really did spend some time doing that MCU dance with Star Trek for a while within that particular period of time. And so what we isolated was 1 year, basically. It's about 1.5 years to 2 years, really. That's right at the end of all of those shows, but before the last Star Trek Next Generation movie, which is called Nemesis, which kind of takes some things off the table and kind of ends the Next Gen story in a lot of ways. And so what we wanted to do was say, okay, can we tell a story in those 2 years where everybody from Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager are all on table, and no one's being taken off table yet because of what's going to happen in Nemesis, where the Romulan Star Empire is still on table. They get effectively destroyed in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. So we know that they're going to get destroyed in a few years. Great. Let's set that up. Let's kind of build inside of that. And then where we want to have a conversation with the original series, which takes place in an earlier time, or Enterprise, or Strange New Worlds, or Discovery, which takes place several hundred years in the future, we will find story connection, not literal characters. So we won't say, take a character from Discovery and throw them onto our ship willy-nilly. That's not the point. The point is to say, okay, maybe Discovery introduced a species called the Kelpians. Great, let's use a Kelpian somewhere. Let's make sure that they're answered to. We know that, for instance, in Strange New Worlds, we know that they play with the Gorn. So great, let's make sure that we don't touch the Gorn, but when we introduce our own species, we use the Gorn mythology to differentiate them, right? And how do we with Enterprise, how do we take the great granddaughter of a character from that show and make a new character who gives us a legacy of that universe?
And of course, the fun thing is also directly from the original series, Spock and Scotty are still alive. Wildly enough, Scotty was trapped kind of out of time, and we will meet him again in Next Generation. So he is still on the table and is in fact the engineer of Benjamin Sisko's new ship, while Spock is a Vulcan. So that boy is just 200 years old, at least. So he's definitely getting up there, but we see him at the start of the JJ series, and he is very much on the table and is in fact a co-lead of our sister book, Star Trek Defiant.
Awesome. I mean, that sounds great. I wish I was more of a Star Trek fan to get into it. I will start watching that show just so I can get into your...
Honestly, here's the thing. You can just read the comic. I know that sounds crazy, but that is actually the plan for us. Like when we set up the comic, the whole point here was, if you don't know anything about Star Trek, don't worry. We're going to walk you into the thing step by step, like literally from ground up. We're going to give you stuff to stand on. So if you don't know who Benjamin Sisko is, don't worry about that. You didn't understand any of those proper nouns Colin threw at you? Don't worry about it. You're going to meet all of those people in the book as if you were meeting them for the first time. And so fans can be like, oh shit, that's blah, 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 blah. But that doesn't mean that you have to know who blah, blah, blah is, right? You just have to meet them within the context and learn about them. And then ideally, when you go back and watch the shows, you can be like, oh shoot, that's where that comes from. Or, oh, that character is in this. And it gets to be kind of a reverse version of that process. That's really what the books were designed to be read like. I don't know how many people are really going to do that. That's at the nature of comics. But I'd say, like, try the first issue. See if you dig it. See if you can get into it.
But you heard it here first, fans. Blop, 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 blop is in our book. So, pick it up, because we know you've been looking for the secret backstory of Blop, blop. And his noble endeavors.
See, I knew Star Trek is crazy. I thought he pulled that out of his ass, and apparently it's a real character.
Sir, I pulled that shit right out of my ass.
So you said something in there that I kind of want to pull on, and it's a little off topic, but this also is a good way to transition to the next book. You guys, one of the things about your work that I've always enjoyed is the fact that you are getting these series that are 6-12 issues, like all-in-one stories. At the same time, there's a few books, and you mentioned Guardians earlier. Captain America was another one where I personally was just like, man, I wish there was more of an ongoing, and meaning you were going to get like 20, 30 issues of it. And you said that was an issue with Guardians getting canceled. Has that been an ongoing issue for you throughout your career, or has a lot of your books been planned to be this way all along?
So one of those answers kind of feeds the other. Honestly, early on in our career, we did a book called Joyride. That was a creator-owned at Boom with Marcus Toe. It was like punk rock teenage Star Trek. Joyride was our first attempt at doing a creator-owned book. The other creator-owned book that was ongoing at Boom at the time was The Woods, which is James Tynan's book, and which James had been, I think he went at least 30 issues on that book. So we sort of felt like, well, surely we'll get 30, 40 issues of Joyride. Let's do it. And we really planned for that book to go forever. And it was canceled at 8 for sales, because that's how this thing goes. You get your sales numbers, you see if the book's sustainable, and then people above you make a decision about whether or not that book is going to keep getting printed.
And to be fair, originally, if you find those original issues, they say 1 of 4, 2 of 4 to give it a taste. And then after 4, they were like, guys, this is so delicious. We must have more. So we were planning on more of a story. But then, yes, exactly. At 8, they were like, guys, unfortunately.
Yeah, so just to be clear, it wasn't like they didn't renew the book at 4. They renewed the book at 1 because of the sales at 1. And then the book went on to ongoing after that. We had 7 issues. We got killed at 8. We weren't ready to end it. The end was just not there. We weren't anywhere near an end. And so we basically were going to leave it on this huge cliffhanger. We effectively killed the main character. Like, we were like, the metaphor of this book is you stealing your car and running away with your friends to the next town over and seeing what's over there. And this story, and we sort of assumed that story would eventually have to end with them coming back home and understanding how they had changed. That's how these stories work. That's your catharsis. But they ended us as far away as we could from the town, so we couldn't get back there. The only thing we could do was the only other end of that story, which is, and then you crash your car and die. And it was like, okay, like, I guess that's the end now. And we put that forward, and boom, to their enormous credit, we're like, okay, have 4 more issues so that you can end this series. This isn't how it should end. And we were like, yeah, we agree. So we got 4 more. We ended the book, just as I discussed, about coming home and having changed and learning the lesson. And like, I think we got there. We had to rush it a little bit, but at least we got there. And we felt like, okay, now it's a good 12-issue story, and we know that it got there. And we probably should have planned for that rather than planning for 50. So what we have done since is we look at our initial order, whatever that is. For Guardians, it was 11, right? Mm-hmm. And we say, can we do it in 11? If we just tell our story in 11, can we do it? And we build that. And then if the book is a runaway success and they're like, guys, you get 20 issues, then great. We get to unpack that. We get to, we get to figure that out. Or we get to figure out, maybe that's not the end. Maybe that's the end of the first arc, or the first couple of arcs, and then we have another thing to go to. That had sort of been what we did with Guardians. We were like, we're going to do these 11, and that's going to be the sort of like dark Western period. And then if we get past that, we have a book we want to do that isn't a dark Western, that sits on some of that premise, but plays a little bit more with the Guardians as they were left when we came on the book. With Captain America, that was kind of different. With Cap, we thought we were going to have 1 more year on that book, and ultimately sales decided to not let that happen. And so that line got curtailed, and JMS picked it up and is doing what he's doing. And that is what it is.
But I think we got some advice early on in our career and have just been banged into our head a lot. Most recently by Tom Brevoort, who is, knows what he's talking about.
Wonderful person too.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of become our brand to a certain degree, which is tell full story. Every issue might be someone's first issue of comics. So tell a full story. Mm-hmm. Give them the full meal every single issue. Is something that advice I give to younger writers as well, which is that you are full of great ideas. Do not hold, and this was to Tom's point, don't hold on the good stuff. Get to the good stuff because that's what people want. And then do more good stuff. Right? Like, don't hold on your great idea because you might not get to that reveal. So get there early and trust that you will have more great ideas. And I think that's what really lets us tell very punchy, very quick stories where people get a lot of story content, to use a terrible term, but like you get a full narrative in our stories. And then ideally you trust us to tell something new in the next arc. And that's what we really want to deliver. And I think that has really informed our storytelling. Kind of like tell stories like you just stole a car, right? You don't know when the cops are going to catch you. So you better haul ass now and have the fun while you got it.
I will say, I think that has been one of the really beautiful things about, this is like the distinction between 2 of our other books, right? Outsiders and Star Trek. Outsiders was designed as a 12-issue run. We don't want to be renewed. That book should not go past 12 issues. Mm-hmm. It was designed to be that from the very start. We were greenlit for 12 issues, so we knew we'd have 12 issues, so we wrote 12 issues, right? Everything about Outsiders has been meticulously planned from the start. That's what it was designed to do, and it does it. And so that machine was designed to work at 12 issues, right? But Star Trek wasn't. And we were holding a lot, right? We did not get to the good stuff right away. It took us a year to get to Day of Blood. It's now taken us 19 issues to get to a reveal that we set up in issue 1, right? We have a character in issue 1 who is a mystery. And we have only now, in issue 19, revealed who that character is and what their connection to all of this story is and why they're here. The impact of that reveal would have been lessened by pulling it up to issue 2, right? The reason to do it on this long form is to try to experiment with what comics can give you, which is that longer, more languid, more sustained storytelling, right? And so I think what we've tried to do is sort of accept that at Marvel and DC, it is very hard to get sustained storytelling. It simply just is hard. There's a limited number of seats, and those seats are generally filled by extremely good writers who are halfway through whatever they're doing. So don't think about doing that right now because they're going to be doing it for another 2 years, right? what you try to do is wait until the time is right for you to step into something and hope that you get as much time as you want on it. But Star Trek is the only book, really, where we've ever been told, like, just go. Like, just run. This book will be protected. This book will be managed. We won't cancel you suddenly. And I think that has been a real boon to that whole line, because it's let us tell stories that are a little bit more like the ones that we came up with. Those like long Bendis runs that just like decompress everything and let you get to know these characters and these mysteries and really do long setup payoff moments. I love that stuff. That's what brought me into comics. So while it is much harder to achieve these days, just simply from a corporate structure perspective, on Star Trek, I think we've actually managed to do it, which has been a real joy. But then on the other hand, to Colin's point, right, there's a real benefit to being like 12 issues and you're gonna get the whole thing. Every issue is gonna everything
exactly.
the whole
Or Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts starts with its foot on the gas. It's 4 issues, and every one of them is effectively a full 2.5-hour action movie. That was a fucking blast to write. So, you know.
It was. But was also benefiting from 2 years of setup and payoff from Captain America, which I think that's why that was sort of the back half of that Captain America story is, yeah, we only got 18 issues of Cap, but we got 4 more issues of Thunderbolts and more to come. I can't tell you what that's going to look like or what that is, but that story that we're doing with Bucky and all them, it's not done. So we've been building a story specifically around Bucky Barnes for many years. It just hasn't all been in one title. It was in Devil's Reign Winter Soldier, and it was in Sentinel of Liberty, and it was in Cold War, and it was in the Winter Soldier Annual, and it was in Thunderbolts, and like it's gonna sort of continue that way. This is a little bit easier to do it that way at Marvel than to try to like drop 50 issues of a series. I'm in awe of things like Immortal Hulk. I don't know how they happen. They're incredible. Love them.
Yeah, God bless that it exists.
Yeah, it's incredible that it exists because it is very, very hard to get.
Still get them occasionally, but you kind of answered my next question already about Thunderbolts. But I will just say my preamble to it was going to be like, that is something I've noticed you've done with Bucky and other writers have done it at Marvel and DC as well, is to take a kind of like a B character and make that the overarching between multiple books. And to watch, as somebody who loves like that Brubaker run on Cap is one of my favorite runs of all time. So Bucky became a character I fell in love with, and to see him go through this transformation through your multiple books and kind of capping with Thunderbolts in a way, obviously that it's set up to do more with Bucky moving on is also really interesting too. Not just to do an ongoing Winter Soldier book for 4 years is a different way of doing that storytelling that I've really enjoyed.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I hope that at some point it can get collected like that. You know what I mean? Like that's, I think, the thing is that we always, for guys who love doing single issues, I do think we kind of write for the trade. And like my head is always in the like, you're gonna read this on issue to issue, month to month. But majority of readers historically are gonna read this thing in trade. So how do we make sure that trade paperback feels like you're getting the whole story? And I think that's sort of the trick for me right now is you have to pick up a lot of different trades to get that Bucky story. I hope that when we're done with it, we can do like here's the whole like Bucky Barnes Revolution. Like here it is.
Yeah,
nice omnibus of all the Bucky stuff.
If fans ever come find us at a convention, we will, and you want to drop some serious cheddar, we will be more than happy to put the entire Bucky Barnes saga into your hands. I think we still have a few issues left of Devil's Reign Winter Soldier, which kicks it all off.
Yeah,
which is a great way to kick it off. So let's move over to DC for a second, because this book in particular, I remember when it was announced, this was the book that I said was like kind of my litmus test for you two, because previously to this, you've always done projects that like, I love Batman Beyond, I love the Guardians, I love Cap, so on and so forth. They were always properties that I had a built-in fan base of. Not so much for the outsiders. Sure. So when I was like, I'm going to pick this book up and this is going to be like my litmus test, like, are they really as good as I think they are? Or is it that I really love the properties they're handling? And I'm happy to tell you guys that you really are as good as I think you are.
All right, this interview would have gone real south, real fast.
I was surprised at how much I enjoyed, especially the first 3 issues. I remember every week talking about it, being like, I don't know how they got me to love a Outsiders book as much as they did. So, yeah, how'd you do that?
Well, one of the first tricks is, as you probably noticed, it's not really an Outsiders book.
Yeah.
We do love, personally, I love the classic Outsiders. Arsenal, Dick, Brainiac 5, like all these characters are really, really cool. And one day perhaps we will circle back around and do a much more classic team. This isn't that. This is obviously something a lot more unique and a lot more special, coming at it from a very different direction.
Yeah, I think part of the I think the approach is sort of twofold, right? On the one hand, as Colin points out, conceptually, it's not really an Outsiders book. Conceptually, and I think now we can speak about this pretty openly. We certainly couldn't back when we were soliciting the book because we wanted it to be a surprise. But it's structurally, it's Planetary, which is a book that I don't know if you've read, but which it meant a lot to us, and which I think as we talk about this idea of like long-term storytelling, but single issues that really rip, and that you're always getting a meal. Planetary to me is like it's like the platonic ideal of that.
It's the masterclass.
It's sort of like how do you do comic book storytelling that every single issue feels unique and directed at like an idea, and that the characters don't get forgotten. Like, I just think it's a really wonderful piece of work. And so as we started in on Outsiders, the idea was, how can we take the Planetary engine and apply it to a sort of bat-centric adventure book, which is generally what the Outsiders are, right? Mm-hmm. The weird Black Ops Batman team. So this was like, great, this is the weird Black Ops Batman team. It's just Batman's nowhere near it. They're Bat characters, and they're going to be dealing with weird stuff, but not in like the Black Ops, like X-Force style kind of thing, but in a more like archaeology and strange things and the weird stuff that we don't entirely understand. Let this team be the Star Trek effectively for the DC universe, right? The going off to the final frontier, looking in the eye, trying to see ourselves in the unknown. And I think so. Our hope was maybe some Outsiders fans will like it, but probably what we're going to get are new fans. We're going to try to get the Planetary fans. We're going to try to get the Star Trek fans. We're going to try to get the people who trying to get the Batman fans. We're going to try to get the people who love this.
We're trying to get you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And it worked.
Like, we're trying to get the people who love what we do and want to see it applied to the tapestry of the DC universe. So that was really the goal behind the book, and why we didn't make a more sort of like traditional Outsiders book, because it didn't start like DC came to us and said, hey, will you do Outsiders? Outsiders was never on the table. DC came to us and said, would you like to do something with Kate and Luke? We have a big open space and we don't know what that looks like. What can we do with Kate and Luke that might be neat? And it was Colin and I who came back with, well, we'd like to do this. And we pitched it out to Ben Abernathy, the editor of Planetary, who cut us off halfway through the pitch and said, you're pitching me Planetary. We said, yeah, please don't say no. And he was like, actually, I've been waiting like 18 years for somebody to do this. Let's go. And I think that was sort of our barometer, was like, are you willing to get as weird as we want to get with this? Are you willing to push this as far as it needs to go to be as much of the book that we all promised it was going to be, as possible? And Ben and Anne-Marie have been just incredibly supportive about making sure that happens, and helping that book reach the level that we're trying to reach.
Ironically, the title Outsiders was actually one of the last things to come to get locked in place. A lot of different other titles for this book were kind of floating around at first, but there wasn't an Outsiders book on the table, and obviously, like it's too perfect. It had to be Outsiders. Thematically, emotionally, it's exactly what it had to be. So.
Yeah, what I find interesting about it is like the ups and downs of the book. So you've got like probably my favorite issue so far is when you go into the dimension where Batman goes to mourn.
Yeah.
And then like I can't remember if it's the next issue or a few issues later. It's really this like tragic story of this woman with her powers and how her powers affect the mental stability of the world. And it's really like other sides of the coin in terms of the story they're telling. So I kind of love that it's playing with my mind. It's not like giving me this. Okay, when I buy Daredevil, I know Daredevil's going to do this every issue. And as much as I love that thing he does every issue, like I know what I'm getting into with the Daredevil book. With this, I don't know what the hell I'm picking up every week.
And that is exactly the goal. Like that is exactly the goal. We want to have that mystery box that a reader can go in and they can get something fresh and special and cool and new, and ideally quality controlled. Right? That's the thing that I think we're really like we're leaning on Outsiders more than anything is like it's good. Like I don't say that about all of our books. Like I think that about all of our books, but I would rarely be like, well, you should buy it because it's good. But like that is the thing about Outsiders. I think it's every issue. We're putting everything into it. Robert Carey is putting so much effort into it. It's his first book at DC. It's his first book like this, and he's like leveling up in every issue. Valentina, our colorist, is doing the same. Like I think the whole team is striving on Outsiders every issue to make this crazy thing work, you know? And my hope is that as people read it, and especially as they see it in its totality, it's about to take at the end of issue 6, it took kind of a big turn, and then issue 7 is going to continue that turn, and then the rest of the book is going to very much be a snowball effect. You're still going to be getting a different thing every issue for sure, but the plot is going to start kicking in. And so I think as that comes into place, and as we do start to understand that plot and understand how it's going to change the book and how it moves it forward, our hope is that the plot and the characters and the investment that you've gotten from that first 6 issues carries you through and starts to bring you back the way a Daredevil book would, right? Mm-hmm. Now you do start to know, oh, this is what this character does. This is what this character does. This is what this kind of thing is. But the genre and the storytelling structure, that's always going to change. How we approach the story is always going to shift because that's sort of the mandate of the book. And to talk more about that would kind of ruin the end. So I'll let it be at that.
I was going to say, I would have questions, but I think that last page is a big enough spoiler that I don't want to jump into it. Just
appreciate it.
People can go on comicbook.com wherever they really want to spoil themselves on it, but we're not going to do it here. I will say, though, I'm glad you called out your art team there, because that's the thing that really makes this book tick. I mean, all comics obviously need a good art, but
100%.
That the art team here really pushes the story forward in this, because it's not always, it's very cerebral in what's going on in the book, and you really need to be able to follow the flow of it. And they kill it in this book, man. Yes. It's crazy.
Yeah. That Batman issue is a real test for an artist. And seeing Robert not just be like, sure, yeah, I'll draw like 50 Batman, but also be like, and I'll create flow of action that's clear, and that DPS with the Escher steps, and like I'll make it like a physical space that still feels surreal. Like his mastery of taking what should be really cerebral and turning it into something very literal on the page is a huge part of why the book works. I think issue 5 is the same way. Issue 5 is sort of a tour of monsters. You know, it's not a lot happens in issue 5. It's mostly just an investigation of tone and of horror, and what horror means in comics, and what horror means to our characters, and what horror means in the DCU in general, and sort of the general effect of the rise of our mentor, James Tynion. But I do think that ultimately it only works because the humanity of that club, the humanity of the people, the structure of that place, and where everyone is, all of those beats are, you know, that's Robert. He's making that physically work. And otherwise, I think it could become an essay about comics when it needs to be a story about people. And I think Robert's just really, really good about remembering that this is a story about people and that they are at the center of this.
Definitely. So from that, let's shift over to one of my favorite new publishers 2 issues into their kind of emergence, which is your book at Magma Comics, Principles of Necromancy.
Yeah.
Where I'd love to start is, where did Magma Comics come from? Like, how'd you guys get involved in their kind of launch and everything?
Yeah, sure.
So, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's kind of a fun story. We've known Denton Tipton for quite a while. Him and Bobby Curnow and pretty much the entire Magma team were all at IDW. We kind of had been knowing them as we were starting our Star Trek work and working with them and having a real great time. Very cool guys, very smart. I mean, they're all, legends within comics within their own rights. When they left IDW and started this imprint, Denton came to us and said, guys, I want to work with you. What do you want to do? And we were a little reticent. I'll be fair about that, very clear. Obviously, we've all heard stories about working with young publishers and how those things can kind of go real off the rails real fast. And so we kind of, we wanted Denton to show us the contracts, right? Not even show us the money, but just prove we want to know that this is going to be a real operation. And to his immense credit, he was like, I understand, guys. Let me show you the paperwork. And every few months he would update us. He'd be like, we're at this step, we're at this step, we're at this step. So he really kept us in the loop, which really gave us so much trust in the company that when eventually he was like, guys, deals are done. Company solvent, let's go. We knew that he knew what he was talking about. And we felt really, really comfortable investing our time and our creativity in this exciting new publisher who was doing everything the right way.
That's very
I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, go ahead, Jackson.
No. I honestly, Colin covered it. They came out of IDW. They immediately called us, and we made them wait a year while they got their whole financing model together. But when they did come at us with the thing, we gave them one idea. We said, this is what we want to do. We haven't done horror, not really. And we certainly haven't done it like this. We want to really stretch the muscles that, we can't stretch at Marvel and DC that don't have any place in Star Trek. Are you willing to do something that's kind of off brand for us? And I think to their enormous credit, they were like, yeah, love it. The only thing they changed was the title. the book, when the book was first written down, it was called Necromancer. And they were like, that's a little vague. Can it be called something a little more can we get the medical thing there a little more? Principles of Necromancy? And we were like, yeah, we love that. That's great.
So this kind of goes back to something you were saying earlier too, where I read that first issue and absolutely just loved everything going there. And it really felt like a one-shot comic, but it's not. It's a series. And I can kind of see where the overarching plot is even in issue 1. But is the entire series built like one-shot comics with a small overarching thing?
Yes,
100%. Our inspiration for Principles kind of comes directly from one of the greatest works ever done, Hellboy. Right, Mignola kind of approached these individual stories, and you can really pick up any issue of Hellboy and absolutely fall in love. Hellboy is a very clear character, right? You understand him almost just from the visual alone. You understand exactly who Hellboy is, and then the stories are rarely about Hellboy. They are about the world and the people that Hellboy impacts. And by them, we understand him. And that is very much kind of the approach that we wanted to take with this with Dr. Jacob Eyes. He is the core of our story, but you would not necessarily say that he is the protagonist of every issue. In fact, you very specifically wouldn't. The lens of each of our stories is in the people that he is impacting and the people that surround him. And that's very conscious of our part, because we want you, the readers, to be able to make your own decision about Eyes and his morals and his motivations. We will never put you in his head. We want you, we will always be at him from the perspective of the people who he impacts.
I was gonna say, he feels almost like the antagonist of the story. Like the real protagonists are, I don't think this is a spoiler, but the real antagonist of the first issue is the barbarians that you meet early on. And what they go through. And what I loved about it was exactly that, where you could tell he doesn't feel like what he's doing is evil. He's just kind of doing science. So to speak.
I think that's the trick of this, right? Is that every time you see Eyes, by seeing him through a different perspective, you're going to start to better and better understand what's going on behind eyes, right? The reason his eyes are replaced with lenses isn't just from like a story perspective. It's also because thematically it gives us a character who you can't read. You can't look at that guy and see kind eyes or evil eyes or harsh eyes or dramatic eyes. You just see lenses, like big black
eyes are very literally the windows of the soul, and we are refusing to let you see into his soul.
And so instead, every issue, you're going to get an experience with him as a different kind of person. Issue 2 sees him as a mentor. Issue 1 sees him as a doctor. Issue 3 sees him as, well, I don't want to ruin it, but like issue 3 sees him within a completely different context that kind of opens up our world a little bit more. And then issue 4, and I mean, issue 4, again, not to get into spoiler territory, but his whole life takes a wild turn and we see him in a very different context. But in every single one of those stories, the protagonist is not Dr. Jacob Eyes. Eyes is the subject of the story. And if you want to frame the story around and see it from his perspective, he can absolutely be the protagonist. But he can be the story's subject. He can be the story's victim. He can be the story's hero. He can be the story's villain. He can be all kinds of things within this story. And each of those things is going to unveil the man underneath a little bit more. For all of its body horror and weird science and fantasy world building and like Dark Souls, like metal wildness, the book is ultimately just a character study. It's just a character study that we're doing in a sort of experimental way, which feels right for an experimental guy.
Which is exactly the feel I got, where I was like, we're really diving into this character more than anything. I'm trying to tread lightly because I don't want to spoil the book, because everybody should go out and buy it. I reviewed it and I gave a glowing review.
I think we could talk about issue 1 pretty in depth. If
you haven't read issue 1, pause the podcast right now. Go get the book. Read it, come back. It won't take you very long, and then we'll talk about the book now.
There we go.
So we're back.
Dr. Eyes has a big transformation in the issue, like physical body horror transformation.
Yeah.
How much of that was your art team having fun, and how much of that was you guys really pounding down like, this is what we need to see?
Oh, we have never had to pound down on Eamon Winkle yet. Dude is so Eamon is our brother on this project. He's the artist who makes this whole thing possible. Eamon's imagination is as wild and out there and gruesome as it needs to be, right? The reason why we picked Eamon was because we knew that issue 1 was going to have a kaiju made of bodies and a surgeon that you had to be able to look at him and say, oh, I'm simultaneously inspired by and terrified by that guy. And so knowing that we really needed to hit that horror level and that sort of like surrealist body horror level in this book meant we needed to find somebody from a baseline who had that in them. And so we really went out and I literally did a Twitter search. I put a thing on Twitter that was like body horror, dark fantasy, weird medical shit. Who wants in? And I got tons of people sending me their art. And one of them was Eamon, who sent 4 images, and all 4 images looked like Kelly Jones meets Greg Capullo. And I was like, well, that's what we need. That's exactly what we need. And we asked him, do you have interiors? He said no. And we said, fuck it, we trust you. And we just did it. These are his first interior pages.
Wow.
We got lucky with Eamon. And I think probably the kaiju went through like a 2-step design process. Eyes' helmet he got the first try he
gave us a bunch of different options on Eyes' helmet, but at the end of the day, first option was one and done. This image that our faces are currently covering up, but which is the A cover to the first issue, was no notes. Our notes was literally like, can there be a few more bodies?
It was literally like, just give it less headroom.
But like he is, and the funny thing is, he's just like many absolutely disgusting artists. He's the sweetest guy, just an absolute pussycat of a real nice, humble gentleman. And he draws the most twisted, messed up. There's some stuff in issue 2 that's I literally wrote him and I was like, this is stomach turning. Nice.
I'm blown away by this as his first interiors, because he talk about somebody who got a chance and just ran with it. Because the book's gorgeous. I was gonna say too, yeah, that last reveal of like the morphed kaiju barbarians, and when you zoom in on the last guy living's face, and just he nails that scene so well, it put shivers down me when I was reading it. Like, I cannot believe what is going on this page.
That double DPS, right? The big reveal, the zoom, and then that, like, the one with his face in the center of it as you're seeing the impact of this thing. That was that's the actual horror of the book. And it's not just from how gross it is, but it's for how much you should feel for that guy, because you've followed him the whole story. You know Karen. You've understand his hopes. You understand his dreams. And now you've seen what he can become in the hands of Jacob Eyes. And then I think what's interesting is that then there's the denouement. There's a moment at the end, which I know was sort of key to the book for Bobby Curnow. Bobby Curnow was like, I literally was going to give this book all these notes. And then I read the last scene and I was like, never mind. They handled it. Which is like at the very end, Eyes shows up and has that moment where he kind of describes his process and tries to explain why he has done what he has done in a sort of like relatively specific way. Yeah. And he talks about other doctors and what they do and what he means and what his goals are as opposed to the rest of the medical establishment, and reframes what he has done, which is overtly, awful and horrific. He is able to frame it not just as heroic, but kind of profound, and then walks away into the snow to be in another adventure. And when we had done that scene originally, there's a panel. Basically, the last 3 pages, we never saw Cairn. We never saw that guy still in the kaiju. We'd shown you him, and then we were going to show you Eyes, and then Eyes was going to walk away. And we realized we were really missing a moment where we saw the absolute devastating sadness on this guy's face, that this realization that he was never going to get better, that it was never going to change for him, that this is now his life forever. And we were talking, it was like a few days before we went to print, and we were talking with Eamon about another issue, and we were all just looking at every page and being like, is there anything we want to mess with? And we hit that page and we all realized, shoot, we're really missing an emotional beat here that needs to be here for this to feel right at the end. And Eamon whipped up a new panel like that, got it colored, didn't have to change anything about the lettering. It was just all it was always going to be. And now to this day, I think it's my favorite panel in the issue. It's like the second to last panel of the second to last page. And I think it nails the whole thing. Which just goes to show you, comics are never done till they're done. You could be writing the thing right up to the last minute.
And circling back around, right? The entire point of that panel is the eyes, right? Eyes are the windows to the soul. And that was so important to us to really kind of lens in, and see that moment. And I think to us, a lot of people, I hope that this is coming through, because I think a lot of people might look and flip through the book and go, ooh, body horror, ooh, slasher, ooh, terrifying. And that's not our point, right? Blood and guts and gore is not horror. It's fun, but it's not horror. Horror is looking at the rest of your life and realizing that it's fallen through your fingers, right? Horror is knowing that the thing you want, you will never achieve, right? That's the truly terrifying shit that is what this book is about. It's a much more real and visceral kind of terror than, oh my God, someone's coming at me with a knife, right? Yeah. And I hope that people feel that and are willing to kind of put themselves in that place emotionally. We guarantee that we're gonna, well, a lot of times, for example, in our Guardians, we knew we were gonna break your heart, but we were confident we were gonna put it back together for you. This is a horror book, my guys. This book is seeped in tragedy, and sometimes that's exactly what life gives you.
And you just explained something I've felt for a while really well, which is I haven't really cared for horror recently in terms of movies and everything, because jump scares don't do it for me. Murder porn doesn't do it for me. But this does it for me, which is at the end of the day something that I always talk about and enjoy. I like two things more than anything in my storytelling, which is dialogue and character. And that's exactly what this book did. Was that moment. It was that moment of like, no good deed goes unpunished, because that man had the best of intentions by bringing this necromancer in, and it just fucked him in the end.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
I think that's horror. Like I just second everything Colin just said. We are not into jump scares. We are not into murder porn. I can't stand those kind of movies. I don't like those kind of books. I don't read a book for its grisly art. I read a book because that grisly art is giving me something from a character perspective. It's part and parcel with telling me a story. I think a lot about the old Kieran Gillen was one of our favorite writers, said some really, really nice things about Necromancer when I sent it to him. And one of the things he said was, he was like, this imagery really stuck in my head, like it like glued itself to my brain. And it reminded him of the old Avatar books, right? Not, the publisher Avatar, who did, they made a whole lot of like books, including Kieran's Uber. Yeah, and including Cross. Right? and that's the point, right?
Yep.
I couldn't stand Crossed. I couldn't read it. It was not for me, because the violence wasn't doing anything for character. The violence was there as this horrible reflection of character, but it was mostly about grinding you through the dirt of how horrible that world could be. That's like, Crossed was a parade of horrors. But like Uber wasn't. Uber had all of that, had a lot of grossness, and had a lot of horror, but at its heart, even though it was baked in all of this military science fiction, or all this military fiction, and all this like historical remove, at its heart, it was a character story. And all of that violence was to service how dangerous it is for our characters, and what a world it is to live in, where for all of your best intentions, for everything that is good about you, this world can just destroy you, with like just a snap. And like, I think that kind of horror, I think we can all get something out of that, especially in today's world, where you have to be resilient, and you have to be able to put yourself forward, and you have to be able to deal with the sort of day-to-day horror that we experience everywhere. I don't think that piling on in a way to desensitize you is a service. I think it is just I think it's a cheap scare. I think what we try to do is not desensitize you, but like resensitize you. Remind you that this should make you feel something.
Yeah. And just everybody out there, because we have to move on to some future projects here before I let you go. But if you read one book by these two this year, make it Principles of Necromancy. It's that good.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about the future. Recently, it was announced that you guys are doing, now is it NYX or NYX?
NYX.
NYX.
Only not NYX, because we're not using Kaiden Nixon, who was the character by which you could call that book NYX.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys were announced to be part of the new kind of rebrand of X-Men with this NYX book. Once again here, you're treading into territories of, I'm not much of an X-Men guy. Here and there I jump into it, but I'm not like that hardcore X-Men guy. Do love Miss Marvel though, so that's gonna be my pull in.
There you go.
So I guess first, what is NYX? And then we can go from there. So if you want to just explain the basic plot of the book.
Sure. NYX is the story of mutants in diaspora. It is, for the last several years, the X-Men have had a island nation called Krakoa that has given mutants all of the things that, if you are an X-Men 97 viewer, you just saw in Genosha. It has given them mutant culture, mutant art, mutant language, mutant passion, mutant political power, mutant scientific power, mutant hard power and soft power. It's been a way to take the mutants and give them a fully separatist organization that allowed for them to achieve their own kind of excellence unbound by humans. But it also has this sort of original sin of being fundamentally isolationist and fundamentally separatist. And so, as happens in stories, the Krakoan age is about to fade away. It's going to end. It is in the process of ending. And as it ends, a new run of books is going to kick in. There's going to be big X-Men books. There's going to be X-Force. There's going to be a Phoenix book that takes place in space. There's going to be a lot of like really big superhero-y action titles.
And we've been reading those scripts as they come in, and each of them kicks ass. Like each of these books really are a return to form for really some kind of like classic rad X-Men storytelling that a lot of people are going to get very excited about. I certainly am.
Yeah, a quick shout out to 2 of those books, because 2 writers on the Jed MacKay and Stephanie Phillips are doing 2 of those books.
Yep.
And those are 2 writers that really need more recognition in this industry.
They are great writers. They're great books. I don't know that Jed needs more recognition. He's writing X-Men and Avengers, but fine. No,
I still hear some murmurs about Jed out there. I'm just like, you guys, all you motherfuckers need to read Moon Knight.
Oh,
that's what you need to do.
They need to stop talking shit about him for sure. He's talented as hell.
Yeah,
I love Jed MacKay.
Yeah, no one should be talking shit about Jed MacKay. He's one of the best out there. But Jed's X-Men is wild and great, and I love it. And people are gonna, I think, especially if you're like a fan of the Morrison era, it's gonna be your like full flavor. Yeah. But well, we came in, they asked us to come in and pitch and talk about what we wanted to do, and we really came in with one thing and one thing only, which is we want to talk about what it's like to go from having a culture and a community and a safe place to be, to having to once again live among people who hate and fear you. What it means to be an outsider and step into spaces where you don't feel comfortable and have to learn how to feel comfortable inside of those spaces or create your own spaces for comfort. We want to tell a story that takes all of the Black and queer metaphor that exists fundamentally in X-Men and fundamentally in most mutant stories, and which has very much driven the X line through Krakoa, and refocus that on the very real reality of living as a person who doesn't conform to everyday standards in your community, and what it means then to find community, to find friendship, to find safety, to reevaluate family, to reevaluate your friends. That's what this story is going to be. So effectively, NYX is a ensemble book for the mutants who are not on superhero teams, for the mutants who are either individual superheroes like Ms. Marvel or Laura Kinney's Wolverine, or are just civilians who don't want to have anything to do with that superhero life, like Anoli or Prodigy. We want to take these characters and say, how do we step them into something that feels like the real world, that feels like the world outside your window? And then how do we turn that into something exciting and interesting and refreshing? Because it's not the world outside your window, it's the world outside your window plus mutants. And that those mutants are coming now to New York with their own language, with their own fashion, with their own culture, with their own underground, with their own history, with a sense of national pride, which they've never really had before. And what it means to turn around and have to like live with all of that without the safety blanket of Krakoa, without Professor X being able to bring you back to life when shit goes wrong, right? What is it like to have that, but have it with stakes? And like, that's the goal of NYX, I think, is to like reapply stakes to the people who for a long time have gotten to just be safe. And then that's why we centered around Ms. Marvel, because she's the one mutant out there, like prominent mutant, right? Recently brought back to life. Big part of the Hellfire Gala was like revealing her mutant kind. Okay, so she's back as a mutant. She never spent time on Krakoa. She doesn't have that language. She doesn't have that culture. She doesn't have that history. She has New Jersey culture. She has her family. She has her Pakistani background. She has all of these things that are part of who she is that don't have anything to do with being a mutant. And now you have her reckoning with a mutant community who all have a shared language and understanding that she doesn't. So what it's like for her to learn that, to become part of that, to embrace her inner mutant with these people who have a lot to teach her, even as she has a lot to teach them. Like, that's really where the book sits: is friendship and understanding and challenge and what it's like to live as a weird person in the real world.
And I think One of the things that is absolutely, you've heard us mention it before, and then Babu. One of the original things about NYX is also it's about youth, especially in the original series, and now that's one of the things we're carrying through. It's about what it's like to be young in these spaces. It's very grounded, it's very street level. But you heard us mention Karen Gillan. I mean, Phonogram, Wictive, like these are stories that resonate so deeply with us. This is not a story about the olds. This is a story about what it's like to be young in these spaces, which also means being stupid, going to parties, making bad choices, flirting with boys, right? Like it's not, the stakes might not be, oh my God, sentinels are attacking. The stakes might be, can I kiss that person that I think is super cute? Right? Like, yes, Miss Marvel is a superhero. Yes, Laura Kinney is a superhero. Trust me, we've got bitchin' fights going on in this book. But at its core, it is about these kids just trying to live. And I think that's really the thing that makes it stand out against a lot of the other books that are very focused on fights and tights. This book is about people just trying to make it by.
Well, and I think what's cool about that is like if you are reading the main X titles, there's going to be X-Men by Jed, which they've really shown is going to be like a revolutionary action book. There's going to be Uncanny, which is by Gail Simone, and it's going to be a beautiful Gail Simone character-oriented X-Men book. If you love X-Men and you love Gail, I'm like a pig in shit, man. I'm so psyched. She's like my favorite writer, and I just think her X-Men are brilliant. So can't wait for that book. Extraordinary, which is the third book, is Eve Ewing and Carmen Carnero, our partner from Captain America, doing effectively the next generation of X-Men, right? This is going to be like the high school kids, the brand new mutants. You're going to be getting brand new mutants out of Exceptional with Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost, sort of as like their mentors. Now, our book is I think in a really nice conversation with that book, because that book is a reframe of the old Xavier's school premise, right? What's it like to be mutant kids, find community in your mutant kind, have mutant professors? It's just, in this case, it's not really a school. Our kids, they're past school. There is a school in our thing, but it's a human university. Prodigy is teaching at a human university. Sophie Cuckoo and Kamala Khan are going to a human university. They are mutants in human spaces. And I think that's a big framework that we're going to be trying to sort of use as a conversation between us and Extraordinary. I think Extraordinary is going to be very much one side of that coin, and NYX is going to be another. And I think when those kids meet, inevitably, they're going to have a lot to talk about because they will really have their own unique experiences with what it's like to live inside of human culture.
Yeah, so we're talking about like college age kids, like just finally getting out of the shadow and it's time to party and have a good time.
Kamala is definitely the youngest member of our team. This is kind of like she's after high school. She's coming out to New York to kind of take night classes effectively, like she's in this class, but she is still in high school. But everyone else is, there are a lot of the kids from Academy X. When we first met them, they were the age of the kids that are in Exceptional X-Men now. But now, yes, they're in their early 20s, so they're young adults and they're finding their way.
And I feel like I know the answer to this, but we got to ask it. For new readers, people who've never read any of these characters before, how good's the onboarding? Are you welcoming newbies in, or is this a strict like no, only the old school allowed?
No, definitely definite onboarding. No worries there. If you don't know any of that stuff I just said about Krakoa, we're going to teach you it. If you don't know who Miss Marvel is, you'll know within a couple of pages. Each of these characters are kind of going to get introduced to you in their own way. But it is also, I will say, because the X-Men fan base is the X-Men fan base, because these books tend to sell well and because they do have a really large community of people behind them, we have felt a certain ability to not have to recap quite so hard and instead be like, let's just get you on board and kind of move forward. But we took some time in issue 1, especially, to make sure that people were grounded in the state of the X universe, just so we weren't taking anybody for granted.
Yeah, it's
Definitely.
the entire line. I mean, the tagline, the line is from the ashes, right? This is an entire line that is meant for new readers. You can come in, and if you've been reading forever, you're going to get new exciting stories and a new exciting direction. And if you've never picked up an X-Men comic, like, trust us, my guys, we're going to hold your hands and we're going to bring you into this exciting world.
Very cool. That is something X-Men desperately needs too. It is a very daunting corner of the Marvel universe.
I think the trick is that it shouldn't be any more daunting than anything else. It's just, I think, because they're all ensemble books. You know, I think it's because like none of the other franchises are built entirely on ensemble books, and like Guardians is one ensemble, but the X-Men, like, we're launching like how many ensemble books? Like, so many ensemble books.
Four,
like,
four, five.
Four. Well, 5 announced, right? Because like we're not a team book. We don't have a superhero team in our book, but we are an ensemble book. Yeah. And like Principles, you're going to see every issue of NYX is from a different perspective. So Kamala is our lens on issue 1, but she's not the main character of issue 2 or issue 3 or issue 4. She'll be a member of the book. She'll be a part of the community that the book takes place in. But just like any ensemble TV show, you're going to have, you know, like you would go, like this is a bad example, but like you'd watch Friends and you'd have Joey episodes or Chandler episodes or Monica episodes or Rachel episodes. So too will NYX. We're going to bounce around this cast. And we're really going to move this focus around so that no one gets like left in the dust. We don't want to have a character that's like, oh, we've been ignoring them for 7 issues.
There was a little show. I'm not sure if anyone remembers it, called Lost. Which honestly, I said was a joke, but there's
plane landed in an island or something, right?
Yeah, it's one of the best shows ever made. No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. But yeah, that does it also incredibly well.
Yeah, my feeling about X-Men being daunting is I think it's because it's a universe inside of a universe, so it's got that layer.
Yeah,
that really. But anyways, so you guys have been really gracious with your time, but I can't let you leave without 2 more quick questions. One. Anything else we got going on in the future? Anything you can tease? I
think we already said we're going to continue with Bucky. We can't wait for people to be able to show you what that means. It'll be a little bit.
Yeah, I can't say anything else about that. It's tied in some very exciting.
But if you want hints as to why or how or what form that will take, I do recommend checking out Thunderbolts 4. It does weirdly have some proper setup in there for what's going to come next. So that's on that front. And then anybody who read Timeless last year,
yes,
there's a secret project in there that no one knows about yet. And that's all I'll say about that.
Pulling that issue back out.
That thing is filled with secret projects, so that'll be a real vague.
Do you see the little do you see the little Marvel shaped laser in the middle of Jackson's head right now? The assassins are about to drop him.
Do you see me as Charlie Day with all the little pinholes going on later? I'm like, oh, kind of the same vein, but I got to do it.
Oh, and there's another thing actually that we have that hasn't been announced yet, also over at Marvel. That has one of the most seminal and impressive artists, one of our favorite artists on it. It involves
buildings. Oh my God. I totally forgot. Jesus. I forgot we were even doing that book. I love it. Great.
It's going to be a mini series.
Right now, like we have a script due this week. Why am I forgetting it's
But it's very cool. It's one of our very favorite characters, and we're telling a story that fans have been really excited to. I'm sure fans are going to lose their freaking minds when they see what we're up to on that one. But yeah, right. We're so busy that we forget even the books that we currently have deadlines for.
Yeah,
and as Kathy would say.
All super exciting. This is kind of the same vibe, but I gotta ask it because it's me.
Sure.
I'm the Batman Beyond guy.
Yeah.
Anything on Batman Beyond?
Okay, so I have a stock answer for Batman Beyond, which is nothing yet, but we want to. So what that means is that if you take away nothing else from this interview, so we have done 2 volumes of Batman Beyond so far. Batman Beyond Neo Year and Batman Beyond Neo Gothic. We have been very upfront about wanting to do a third. This was planned as a 3-part series. We'd really love to do a third volume. We'd love to capstone it. That's really and I think that'll be everything we have to say about Terry, at least for now, when that is done. We'd love to do that third volume. That third volume is going to be entirely determined by the sales of the trade paperback of Volume 2. So the Volume 2 trade paperback is coming out soon. It'll be out, I think, in 2 months. Please, if you are listening to this and you're a Batman Beyond fan, spread the word. Batman Beyond Neo Gothic, get that trade. Get it for your friends. Get Batman Beyond fans to buy it. Get it for your family. Get more Batman Beyond friends to buy it.
Buy a whole box of them. Use them to level out your table. Build yourself a chair out of Batman Beyond trades. We literally don't care. Just buy as many as you humanly can.
Everybody out there, listen to me. Everybody complains about last-minute Christmas shopping. It's right there. You can buy it, you can wrap it, you can put it in the closet, and you're good.
There you go. This is one of those places where to get back to that first thing we talked about, right? Where just the comics market is determined by sales. So this is just one of those hard and fast, straight up, brutal truths, right? If we want more Batman Beyond, Batman Beyond New Year sold crazy numbers, which was why we were able to do Neo Gothic so easily. The trick is the comics market is not in the same position in 2023 or 2024 that it was in 2021. When in 2021, everybody had all these stimulus checks and all this crazy money that was coming out of COVID. And so people were spending it on comics. We had huge sales. It was wild. That just wasn't the case for the sequel. We had good numbers, but they're not Neo Year numbers. So it looks like a downward trend. What we need is for Batman Beyond fans to show up and remind them that Terry fans are out there, that they're psyched about it, and that they want a final volume. And then if we can make a dent in their sales numbers, I think we can absolutely get this book done. There's not an unwillingness at DC to get it done. It's simply a matter of numbers. So I think that's effectively what we're angling at right now is, can we just get those numbers there? And can we let Batman Beyond fans know that it's important to pick that book up?
So this podcast just turned into me pimping this book every week.
Thank you.
That's what's going on.
We appreciate that.
The fun thing is, even if you haven't read Neo Year, Neo Gothic is an exploration of the characters and themes that Bruce buried. So if you are a Batman fan and there are elements that you've always wanted to see within the Terry universe, if you wonder what happened to these classic characters in the Neo Gotham time frame, this is the book where we start to dive into that, and we get deep into the lost lore and legends of the Batman universe. So
that'll be out on June 11th of this year.
Everybody, go buy it. Just
buy it. Why not? And get Principles of Necromancy.
Don't waste money on my Patreon. Go buy Batman Beyond Neo Gothic because I want the volume 3.
Thanks, Chris.
You sweet, insane man.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
So, gentlemen, you've been so generous with your time. Before you take off, where can we send people to follow you? Social media, website, whatever terrible internet decisions you make, where can we send them?
Terrible internet decisions truly is the way to phrase it right now. Yes. You can find me on X at, oh God, that's tasted bad in my mouth, at CP Kelly.
And you can find me on Twitter at Jackson Lanzing. That's Lanzing. Or you can find me on Instagram at Found in the Wild, which I'm trying to get a little bit better at. That's all one word, Found in the Wild. That said, we are going to be revamping our internet presence here pretty soon so that we get rid of doing this dual personal accounts thing. I don't think either of us like doing it anymore. And we really prefer to have a centralized location for fans of what we do to find us. So look out for new Hivemind social channels and probably a Hivemind web presence or a Substack or something in that effect within the next year. Because I think that's going to be where all this ends up for us.
So everybody out there watching or listening, you heard it here. Go follow them on Twitter, X, whatever we want to call it. And look forward to more awesome announcements in the future. Guys, thank you so much for stopping by today. And I look forward to the next time.
Thanks, Chris.
Our pleasure.